Morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. So the question that was posed online was, how do you restart creativity? I want to start just by saying my comments today don't reflect the opinions or policies of my employer, my school, or anyone other than myself, unless you happen to agree with them, and then they reflect you. This is my backstory. I was born here in Vancouver. When I was young, we moved to Vernon and then to Ontario. While I was there, I completed an honors Bachelor of Science at the University of Waterloo in Health Studies and Gerontology. I did an MSc at Queen's University in Epidemiology and Biostatistics, and I'm currently a PhD candidate in the School of Population and Public Health at UBC. I also have a job, and my job is at the BC Cancer Agency, and what I do there, I'm a health economist, and so I do a lot of cost effectiveness analysis. And the idea is, if we're going to invest public funds in the healthcare system, we need to have some kind of evidence about which is going to give us the best value for that investment, because it's all of our money, and we want to make sure that we're distributing it not just equally, but equitably, so that we're getting good value for that investment. So my job involves a lot of different pieces: research design, grant writing, manuscript writing, data analysis, some science communication. But the idea behind the job is to safeguard and to improve the quality of publicly funded healthcare so that it's sustainable and so that it's there for future generations. My PhD is related to my work at the Cancer Agency, so I started it in 2012, and I had this great idea, and I worked for 2 years, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to change the world, I'm going to do all this stuff, and I took it to my committee after like immersing myself in the literature and getting all this stuff written, and they said, no, you can't do this, and here's the many good reasons why you can't do this, and you probably should have talked to us a lot earlier. So I restarted my PhD from scratch in 2015. And so my topic now is using decision analytic modeling software to simulate the trajectory of patients through the healthcare system. And this is focused on oral cancer. And the reason behind why I'm doing it and the way I'm doing it, I'm using a software called Python. Many of you are probably familiar. There is software, there are commercial software packages that do this kind of modeling, but they're really, really expensive, and the global burden of oral cancer happens to fall in low and middle income countries. So there's this disparity between the tools that you need to solve the problem and the availability of those tools to the people who have the problem. And so my idea is just make an open source, shareable, customizable model that anyone in the world can use as long as they have an internet connection and a laptop. Thank you. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to restart my presentation. So this is my backstory. I was born here in Vancouver. When I was young, we moved to Vernon, and then eventually to Ontario. I started violin lessons when I was 6. I switched to viola when I was 14. I picked up guitar when I was 15, for the reasons that every 15-year-old boy starts to learn the guitar. Through my sort of early career, I was principal violist in the Mississauga Youth Orchestra, principal violist in the University of Waterloo Symphony. I played in the Kingston Symphony, and then I put together various string ensembles. And then when I moved back, I threw all of that away and restarted as a gigging musician playing in bars and cover bands. And so I did that for a few years. I played in the resident band at the King's Head down in Kitsilano, the Copper Tank, which is another Kitsilano bar. I eventually got poached, and for a couple of years I was playing at the Blarney Stone every Friday night. My joke about that is that they literally had to pay me to go to that bar. And then, you know, I had done that for a long time, built up some momentum, and I decided this wasn't really for me. This is not really something that fulfills me creatively, personally, professionally. And so I restarted as a solo musician back in 2015. And I could explain my act to you, but I thought it would be more fun for me to actually show you. So how many of you have seen someone perform with a looper pedal before? Hands? Okay, about half the room. Looper pedal is basically just a restart machine. You record something, and it plays back, and then it plays back, and then it plays back, and then you can add stuff on top of it. And so, yeah, I'm going to stop talking and start playing. This is embarrassing, because I did tune before I got here.
And I wouldn't believe me either.
See the storm set in your eyes, see the thorn twist in your side. I'll wait for you. Sleight of hand and twist of fate, in a better nail she makes me wait. And I'll wait without you, with or without you. With or without you, I can't live. With or without you, through the storm we reached the shore. You gave me love, I want more, and I wait without you. With or without you, with or without you. With or without you. Whoa, whoa, whoa. 'Cause I've been roaming around, always looking down at all I see. Painted faces fill the places I can't reach. You know that I can use somebody. You know that I can use somebody. Someone like you and all you know and how you speak. Twisted lovers on the cover of the street. I hope it's gonna make you notice. I hope it's gonna make you notice. Someone like me, whoa, whoa. Someone like me, whoa, whoa. You know that I can use somebody. You know that I can use somebody. Someone like you. Someone like you. My hands are tied. She's got me with nothing to live for and nothing left to lose. And you give yourself away. And you give yourself away. And you give, and you give, and you give yourself away. With or without you. With or without you. I can't live. Someone like you, oh, with all looking down at all I see. Thank you. Thanks very much.
I have so much more talking to do, so thank you. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to restart my presentation. So this is my backstory. My name's Ian Cromwell. I was born in Vancouver. When I was young, we moved to Vernon, then to Ontario. I moved back to Vancouver at the end of 2009. This is actually my 9-year work anniversary. Like I started November 2nd, 2009 at the cancer agency. And because I developed connections as a musician and as a fan. My introduction to Vancouver's social scene was through the indie music community. And so in 2016, I was offered the chance to book local acts at a bar at downtown called the Belmont, which is now freshly closed, but I had 2 great years there. So I want to do a little thought experiment here. If I gave everyone here a budget of $0, and I asked you to bring back all of the music that you could, how much music would you bring back? You would bring back more music than I could listen to in my entire lifetime. There is music, recorded music, economically speaking, has a $0 value. So there's this question now that the music industry is facing, that artists themselves are facing, and when I say artists themselves, I'm really talking about me and my buddies, which is, how do you get someone to pay for something that they could get for free in much greater abundance and with much higher quality than I could produce on my home machine or with my limited budget? And so I had been mulling this problem for a while, and so when they offered me a chance to program local music there, I decided to launch a project that I call Locals Lounge. And it's a monthly interview and performance series. So I bring in local artists, we sit down, we have a chat about creativity, about life, about living in the city, about what they are doing. And the idea is to give people the opportunity to meet and connect with the human beings behind Vancouver's music scene, so that when you see so-and-so's face on a poster or something online, that you say, wait, I know something about this person, and you'll be more connected to not only going to their show, but maybe buying their album rather than just streaming it or pirating it, because you now care about the person who made that. And I think that's the reason why people support the artists, the local artists that they do. You go to a local show, you look around the room, it's mostly other musicians and then people who are friends of the people on stage, and it doesn't just so happen that they're friends with the best musician that they could possibly see that night. It's because they care about that person and their art is personal. So the idea is to restart how people think about music, not as a commodity, not as background noise, but as a creative product, something that someone actually produced from themselves, and then musicians, not just as people who run around on stage and do entertaining things, but who actually live and work among us. So how does this all tie together with the theme? And I've been thinking about this for a while, but a lot more recently, over the past year and a half. So my ideas on here are pretty half-baked, and I'm not trying to present them as being this is the answer to the question. But what I think I'm doing is, with all these different non-overlapping things that I'm doing, I think I'm responding to a set of values that's ingrained in me. That I believe things, I have certain ideas about how the world is and how the world should be. And when I go out and do things, I'm responding to those values. And so when I look at what it is that I am doing with my life and why I'm choosing to do the things that I'm doing in the way that I'm doing them, I think I'm revealing what it is that I care about. And so what I've been doing over the past little while is trying to look at those things and figure out where's the overlap? What do they have in common? So my PhD topic and my solo project and Locals Lounge are all really about fitting things together, building stuff, rearranging things, putting them together in a way that is for the public and that is shareable and that is interesting and is innovative. I've always had a passion for design and creativity, but I'm also interested in doing more with less. So my PhD is about doing expensive stuff for free. This whole mess is about being an entire band by myself. And then Locals Lounge is about building from the brilliant, entirely new music scene, basically for free, or from what I can scrape together from playing gigs. But also being innovative and experimental. And that's kind of my whole deal. But I also think that I'm responding to the importance of public investment to create healthy communities. That if we, the people who live in places and do things in those places, are investing in ourselves, it improves life for us all. And that leads us to more likelihood of success and better connectivity. And I think those things are really important. I think that's also part of what I'm doing. So it gets me back to the original question, which is how do you restart creativity? I think the first step is to acknowledge that it really, really, really sucks to have to restart. You've put in a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's other people's money, and it really, really sucks to have to say, actually, you know what, I'm gonna take all that back and I'm gonna do something else. But you should do it anyway. Don't let the sunk cost fallacy sink your dreams. Don't let the fear of losing something prevent you from trying to gain something that's more important, something that's more valuable. I think it's important to indulge in a wide set of interests so that your life is not all about one single thing, but that you're using the full spectrum of opportunities and like go for everything that you like to do, that brings you joy, that turns you on, and then find the overlap between those different interests. Figure out, look at yourself, look at what you care about, look at what you're doing, and say, what are the common values? What do all these different things that I'm doing have in common? And then when you do have to restart, because it's gonna happen, let those values, those overlaps, guide what you do next. Follow your values. Follow the things that are important to you so that when you have to start from scratch, you have a lot more possibility, and you should be going towards the things that get you excited and that you're on this planet to do. And then the last thing, and I think this might be the most important thing, is find the others. Find the people who share your values, whose overlap with yours. Sit in rooms with them, have coffee with them, hang out with them, have them over to your house for dinner, go to their shows, go to their art exhibits, just be in their lives. Being around the creative people who I have in my own personal community has made such a huge difference for my life. So up here, this is footage from an event that we did back in March. The gentleman holding the cup in the front of the frame there runs the Two Arms Whiskey Tasting Society, and so they do guided whiskey tours. And so we paired them up with a country band who was about to release an album, and they paired whiskey with unreleased tracks from the album so that people in the audience got to actually taste the songs while they were listening to them for the first time. It was a pretty cool night. That wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been connected to Kyle and to the Two Arms Whiskey Society. Of course, everyone knows the handsome guy in the middle. Standing next to him is Mark. This was footage taken just a couple weeks ago at Save On Meats, where you guys know the Greasy Spoon, Better Life Foundation, their fundraiser dinners. So Locals Lounge is now the official local music supplier of the Greasy Spoon. So we're sending our artists to connect directly with the community there. And then this guy here who's holding my cue cards, which is very, he runs an event called Emotions Open Mic, which is a community-based, broad-spectrum, urban-focused, collaboration, collective event. It's one of the coolest things in Vancouver's underground indie scene. And if you're into hip-hop music, if you're into soul music, if you're into basically anything that's good, you should check them out. So we're gonna do the break into groups and chat thing. And so I've come up with some questions for the groups to discuss. And I'm gonna let Annalise actually give you guys the instructions of how to do it. But what I'd like you to do in your small groups is first list 3 things that you're currently doing in your life. This could be anything, just anything that you're doing that makes you happy, that you enjoy doing, that gets you excited. Next, reflect on why you're doing these particular things. What is it about these activities that appeals to you instead of the other infinite number of things that you could be doing with your life? And then finally, ask yourself, where is the overlap? Or maybe ask each other, where's the overlap between these things? What do they have in common? How can we use this knowledge to inform our values? So I'm going to turn it back over to Annalise, and we're going to do that. I was listening to the reaction when she first said DJ Black Jesus, and I was like, that's not okay. Please don't call me that, but I used to be called that.
Hello.
Hi.
What are your values?
You mean like aside from the ones that were at the end of the presentation there? That's a really long and difficult question to answer. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to actually, that's an extremely general question. Like I said, what matters to me is the importance of investing in public resources and community, the idea of being economical, doing more with less, and the importance of community to future success. I think those are the three that I covered in the earlier part of the presentation. Does anyone want to know what I was anti? So it was zombie movies as a metaphor for anti-racism activism. The idea that when the zombies, like, when a person gets bit and they're like, oh, I don't feel so good, and everyone who's watching the movie is like, that guy's about to turn into a zombie. And then someone's like, really? Are all people who get bit zombies? I'm just like, no, like we know enough about the world to know that things that like certain things are suggestive of future behavior, and so we like when people think you're freaking out and you're overreacting, that's actually not what's happening. What happened is they know more than you because they've seen the zombie movie before. Anyway, it was a really fun presentation. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. Hi.
Hi, my name's Mia Weinberg, and I'm curious if you could explain a bit more about the oral cancer project that you're involved in. I didn't really understand exactly what you're doing.
So in the health sciences, a lot of the times what we do to discover whether or not something works or is cost effective is we run clinical trials. And so we recruit hundreds, sometimes thousands of people, and we randomize them to either receive a treatment or not receive a treatment. In many cases, it's either unethical or unfeasible to do that, and oral cancer is a very low incidence disease. So doing like I was involved in a trial that managed to recruit 400 people with oral cancer, and we had to go to 7 hospitals across the country to do it. And so the idea is if we want to improve services in oral cancer, instead of clinical trials, we can use what we already know about the world, like what's already published in the literature, and we can simulate using statistical distributions and understandings of the relationships between entities. We can simulate how someone is likely to move through the cancer system. So maybe once they're being screened or once they're diagnosed, once they're being treated, and we can change those variables that go into that model. And by changing the values or the relationships between entities, we can get a fairly informed idea of what is likely to happen if we were to change a policy without having to run a clinical trial. Now, it doesn't replace a clinical trial, but it's really useful in a place where you just can't. There's just, like, it's not practical. And oral cancer is a great example of that. There's a lot more. There's, like, literally 200 pages more of explanation of that, but that's kind of the boiled down version. Oh, sorry, I'm not gonna pick. Annalise is going to pick. Hi.
Hi, my name is Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
Thanks for your talk. I really enjoyed it so far.
Glad to be here.
You mentioned in your presentation that restarting sucks, and you gave us a few examples of when you have restarted. Could you give us an example of a hurdle that you encountered when you did restart and how you overcame it?
So I'm going to take back, I think probably the most obvious example is the music thing. I had recorded an EP, and I had really sunk a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of money into this solo project and a lot of effort and time setting up this identity as a solo musician. And then I launched this Locals Lounge thing, and I was like, oh, cool, well, all this stuff that I did to build my personal brand is going to be great because people are going to know. No one had any idea who I was because I hadn't actually put anything out. I had done a lot of the prep work, but not actually any of the execution. And so it was frustrating for me to have to, I guess, start crafting a brand new identity as someone other than being a musician. And that, I think for me, and at least when we talk about like hurdles to overcome, a lot of it was just my own ego. A lot of it was just like the hurdles that I put in my own path, and being in a place emotionally to say it's okay that people don't recognize how genius I am at everything, and recognize that like there's a lot of people who are doing really cool, innovative things, and I'm working in a crowded space, and that I think it started off as a hurdle and then eventually turned into kind of an asset because I'm working in a crowded space, and because I've done work in that space, I understand. I think when I deal with musicians, it's not as someone who's trying to exploit them for something, nor is it someone who is naive to the reality of what it means to actually like treat music as a business. And so I think that once I got over that, it actually ended up being helpful. I hope that answers the question. Thanks.
Hi, Ian.
Hi, Sam.
Thank you so much for sharing everything you did today. I wanted to ask you, how do you stay encouraged in your creative walk? Because it can be pretty discouraging through that journey. How do you stay encouraged? So,
I'm going to take you back to an earlier slide. Not this. This is just to put my email back up on the screen somehow. But finding the others, finding other people who care about what you're doing as much as you do. Okay, this was a mistake, and I shouldn't have done this because I don't know where my cursor is now. And oh, here we go. No, we're all good. Yeah, being around other people who care, who give a damn, who are willing to actually put their time and effort behind their values makes like an unbelievable difference. Especially when you have those moments when you do have to restart, when you do get discouraged, is that there are people around you who, they understand where you are because they've been there. They understand how to get out of where they are, and they don't give you that really like useless advice of, oh, cheer up, it's not so bad, screw you, you have no idea what I'm going through, Dad. No, like, but I think being connected to other creative people has been for me the biggest saving grace of all.
Hi.
So my question has two parts. The
Okay.
first part is when you were identifying those overlaps that you mentioned, what did that look like for you? Was it sort of just a natural, oh, of course, or was there some reflection there? And then once you realize those overlaps, how has that guided you since then, and how do you stick to that?
Absolutely. So my answer has two parts. So like the process doesn't look like anything in particular. It's not like I sat down with like my overlap journal and that's not how I process things. I'm not trying to take that away from anyone who does use like journaling or vision boards or whatever as part of their creative process. Some like people connect with themselves in different ways. I'm not trying to take anything away from that. But for me, okay, cool, yeah. I realized as soon as I said that, I was like, wow, that was kind of a dick thing to say. But like the process for me looked like a bunch of conversations with people I respect, and a bunch of late nights stoned on my couch playing video games, and a bunch of days at the office when I was procrastinating from the thing that they were being paid to do. And like my process does not look like anything in particular. It's the same way like that I write. I don't have like a process when I do these arrangements. I kind of just throw myself at them, try out a bunch of different stuff. It's very experimental, very innovative. And in terms of how that changed, I can give you an example that is related to the other question. Is that I'd recorded this album, and I was in the process of releasing it, and then this local lounge thing came up and sort of took over that part of my creative life. And afterwards, looking back, I said, okay, like why did I put in all of this work about something that I care about very deeply? These are my songs that I wrote and that I love. Why did I decide to just put that all aside? And the answer I came up with was because this doesn't connect me. This is about me. It's not about us. And no one is a bigger fan of me than me. I don't need to do more to put myself out there. So it was really more about so that was how I realized no, community and building things, that's more important to me than the fun and reward of going on tour or whatever. So that's, I think, how that happened. But it was only by looking back, which is why like one of my slides was like indulge in a wide set of interests. That's, I think, because in economics there's this thing called stated versus revealed preference. And it's related to social psychology, but the idea is that people will tell you, I've got a quote that's related to this on the postcards there, but, and that image, by the way, is Ian here, the guy who drew Ian Cart? No? Okay. He's in school, that makes sense. That's awesome, I love that image, but the quote there is sort of related to that, revealed versus stated preference, is that people will say that they want something. People say that they want change in government. People say that they want an equitable world. People say that they want all of these things. When you ask them, what do you want, they'll say that. But then if you look at how they live their lives, it doesn't never line up, but it doesn't line up perfectly with what they say they want. It's like with, I don't know, I'm gonna delve into my own embarrassing personal history here, but it's kind of like dating profiles online, is that everyone says, like I want someone smart with a sense of humor and who really understands me and who reads books. And then you look at who they've dated and it's all like motorcycle tattooed bartenders from New Zealand. And like, that's what you want. That is what you want. What you say you want and what you actually want are different things. And that's why, and I'm like, those are the women I date, is so like, I think looking at what you are doing and looking back and seeing, okay, how do my actions reflect my hidden values, the values that might even be hidden from me myself, and that gives you insight. And that you can carry forward when you're about to do the next thing. And you can say, look, I think that what I want is a full-time job and a home and a dog and a picket fence and whatever it is that you have in this image in your life. But if you look at what you're actually working towards, it's a loft in Soho with, I don't know, 5 live-in Aussie bartenders or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's, and then follow the thing that you're actually working towards. That's, yeah. I got really specific.
Through all your restarts and with changing your identity over the years, what contrastly always remains the same about you, and how is that valuable?
The reason that that's a very difficult question to answer is because I don't see myself as being someone who has changed at all. Because I'm the one who's piloting the meat, I don't really see myself from the outside. And so I've always been, as you might have been able to tell, I enjoy humor. And I've always been very comfortable, in front of crowds. I've always, being real moment of honesty here, I've always been one to seek out the spotlight. And so that, I think, is something that's endured about me. I've always been concerned about the welfare of people around me, and I think that's important and valuable and still present. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that, even the things that I've just said, I have no idea how accurate that is. You'd have to ask people who have known me for a while, and yeah, that's a tough question to answer. I'm really sorry.
So you have these, it's like a Venn diagram, and you talk about overlap. So do you have seepage between those 3 areas, academics, medicine, and your music? And actually there's more than 3. There's the community work with the musicians. So while you're working on, you get eureka moments when you're working with all your numbers about the way this is working informs that. And so you have seepage between all those areas. So
there's this really cool, I like the Venn diagram image, because there's this concept that I recently learned about. Has everyone heard of kintsugi? The Japanese word kintsugi? Okay, so the idea is think of a Venn diagram, and one is what you love to do, one is what you're good at, and one is what someone will pay you to do. And then right in the middle there is kintsugi. It's this idea of being in your lane and really having found your purpose. So the short answer to your question is yes, there's a ton of overlap. The way, I I'm interested and passionate and like turned on about modeling, like simulation modeling, not like modeling. What is this? This is nothing. But the reason why I'm interested in that is because it's the same thing that makes me want to take a looper and do, like, models are actually loop-based, believe it or not. The computer program is all based around loops, and it's about fitting together different elements and putting things together, and that's arrangement. And arrangement is a very powerful area of, like, music production. There are people who, that's what they do, is they score and they arrange. And figuring out how different things fit together. One of the things that I'm doing right now with Locals Lounge is trying, as I just mentioned, trying to find other people's projects and figuring out ways that we can all be working together and how things can intersect and fit. And so, like, that kind of stuff is just, like, that's just what I'm interested in. And so I think that is the real thing that I like doing, and then everything else that I'm doing is just like an outcropping from that kintsugi thing in the middle. At the same time, I worked pretty hard for a lot of years to keep my academic life and my musical life completely separate. So I didn't, like, my coworkers knew in general that I played, but they didn't know that I had like an entirely separate side career that I was working on. I didn't really talk, I mentioned to people that I was in school. I didn't tell people that I was like completing a PhD, because those, to me, it was for some reason really important to keep them separate. It's not actually for some reason, it's so that if I got in trouble at work, they wouldn't tell me that I had to quit playing music. So I think the overlaps are somewhat inevitable, but my goal now, the thing that I'm working on right now in my like life project, is to try to get all of those things into the same bin, so that every day that I wake up, I'm just doing stuff that interests me, and then at the end of the day, someone gives me some money. That's kind of my whole thing.
Okay, we'll do one last question. Yeah. Okay, glad I found you.
But yeah, by the way, if you have questions, if you have ideas, especially if you have projects that you're working on that you want to link up with, please do contact me. Hi, yes.
Hi, thank you for your amazing talk and performance. It was great. Where or what is your source of energy? Because it's amazing. And I think we could all tap into some of that.
So the short answer to your question is cocaine. The actual answer, and I mentioned this in the pre-interview questions that are on the event website, I get bored so easily. Like, just, it's obscene how fast I get bored with things. And so I really hate being bored. It drives me crazy. Maybe I don't get bored easily, it's just that I have a very low threshold for boredom. And so I'm always like, now I'm going to go over here and do this because this is boring. And then I'm always just bouncing around. And then sometimes I'm able to like pull that in and restrain that long enough to get some actual productive work done. And so I'll get like 3 or 4 of those like get your shit together moments in a day. And then I'll do stuff. But because my head has been in like 5 different places, the stuff that I come up with is like, I look back and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But yeah, and as far as like actual like biological energy, I honestly don't know. I seriously don't know. I've always been someone who falls asleep immediately, wakes up immediately. I'm incredibly lucky to not have had to struggle with depression or anxiety or any sort of mental illness, physical disability. I am incredibly lucky to have not had to deal with that, and I know that that's that a lot of the advice that I'm giving about like, go out and do everything, and it's someone's like, yeah, I got myself out of bed this morning. That was my big do for the day, and I get that. So I don't really know where the energy comes from, but I know what drives me, which is boredom. Thanks a lot, guys.